250 billion naira. Kola Wole Osho's report is presented in this package.
During the plenary, Chairman House Committee on Finance and Appropriation, Honorable Olakunle Shobukola, who gave the report of the executive session of the Assembly, explained that due to the economic challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic, the state needed to assess financial intervention program with little interest rate.
We, your committee, created on this request and are proposing that we approve in tranches of 100 billion for them to be able to secure the funds. This is needed because of increasing higher revenue, which will affect the park allocation to the states. We all know that the effects of COVID-19 will affect the IDR of the state.
Majority Leader Honorable Yusuf Sharif, who moved the motion for the passage of the resolution, seconded by Honorable Jemili Akingbade and supported by the whole House through a voice vote, says the financial program was to be carried out in the tranches of 100 billion naira annually through any of bond issuance, public offering, book building, or such other methods as may be approved by regulatory authorities.
It is the opinion of this Honorable House that having considered a several executive sessions, the request of 250 billion naira, only as 3 years billion down the strategic framework program for the state to stimulate the growth, to stimulate and grow economic post-COVID-19. The program is hereby approved in tranches of 100 billion naira only annually through any bond round, public offering, book building, all sorts of other methods that may be approved by regulatory authorities, while access to other tranches are subject to further approval of the House.
Earlier in his reaction, Right Honorable Olakunle Oluomo says such intervention would sustain the state's economy following the economic downturn occasioned by the pandemic.
We cannot open our eyes and agree the states to be grounded. Even the allocation that is coming from the federal government is shrinking. You can see the federal government themselves reducing their budget and sourcing for money from all over the world to finance the economy, so that the government will not run aground. The same thing will not allow to happen in the states. And since we already have the medium-term expenditure framework, MTF of 250 billion for 3 years, the best approach is to support the government to source cheap funds that will come with variable percentage and for a very long time.
The Assembly at the last plenary acknowledged Governor Abiodun's correspondence seeking the Assembly's approval for bond issuance, public offering, or book building to the tune of 250 billion naira.
The 9th legislature of the Ogun State House of Assembly, since its inauguration on the 10th of June 2019, has to its credit added not less than 20 bills and 16 resolutions, alongside other legislative functions in the last 1 year. In this report, House of Assembly correspondent Kola Wole Osho takes a look at the achievements of this arm of government in the state since its inauguration under the current administration. His report is presented in this package.
On the 10th of June 2020, the 9th legislature of the Ogun State House of Assembly was inaugurated. The lawmakers, immediately after their inauguration, swung into action at providing the conducive ambience required to enable the executive arm achieve its lofty visions for the state. Speaker, Right Honorable Olakunle Oluomo, in a special plenary to commemorate the anniversary, said the Assembly found it expedient to brace up for the task of breaking new grounds in its bid to contribute its quota towards the development of the state, perform all its legislative functions, including lawmaking, oversight functions, quasi-judicial functions, and other duties to the best of its ability.
Most importantly, the House has been able to operate from within its confines without rancor, despite the heterogeneous nature of political party presentation in the House. Similarly, the House has been maintain good and peaceful relationship with the executive arm of government. This has reflected in the level of achievement recorded by the President Akpabio-led administration in the state.
In their separate submissions, other lawmakers expressed appreciation to their constituents for the support being enjoyed so far, calling for more developmental projects, including roads, drainages, health centers, electricity, among others, to improve the living standard of the people. They commended their political leaders, traditional rulers, and colleague lawmakers for support and good working relationship, with a promise to further improve on their activities through sponsoring more people-oriented legislations. In another development, 2 bills, including a bill for a law to provide for the registration of community development associations and other matters incidental thereto or connected therewith, were read for the first time by the clerk, Mr. Adedeji, before the lawmakers.
Committed to the promotion and sustenance of peace and tranquility in Ogun State, the State House of Assembly has directed the Edumare family to stay clear of the 50 acres of land allegedly belonging to Dr. Sam Odraro, situated at Ijegemo near Ilogbo in Ado-Odota, local government area of the state, thus maintaining status quo ante until the Assembly concludes its findings. The Chairman, House Committee on Lands and Housing, Honorable Damilola Shonaye, issued the directive shortly after a meeting with representatives of Edumare Oshoboja families, alongside their legal counsels as well as Dr. Odraro at the Assembly Complex of Kemoson, Abeokuta. Honorable Shonaye issued the stay of actions from all parties, while Dr. Odraro should take charge of his landed property pending the conclusion of the Assembly's investigations, as the said court judgment being displayed around was only on 8 acres, which was totally far away from the 50 acres belonging to Dr. Odraro.
Both parties should ensure that they coexist in peaceful atmosphere, failure of which the House will not hesitate to take serious action against anyone that violates this order until the House resolved to call back on this matter. And finally, status quo should remain.
The chairman, in company of the Assembly's majority leader and other lawmakers, after scrutinizing documents tendered before the committee, noted that Odraro's parcel of land was totally far in distance to the 8 acres belonging to the family. He urged all the parties involved to maintain peace, adding that the Assembly will take drastic action against anyone found to have violated the Assembly's directive until the matter is finally resolved. Concerned with the increasing rates of COVID-19 cases in Nigeria, and in particular Ogun State, Xiaomi Nigeria has donated 25,000 pieces of surgical nose mask to Ogun State government as part of its contributions towards curbing the spread of the disease in the state. Receiving the donations on behalf of the state government, the Deputy Governor, Engineer Noimot Salako Oyedele, appreciated the organization for the generous donation towards the management of the pandemic, adding that the donation might not be the largest one so far, but the state government can never have enough of such donations. The Deputy Governor noted that yesterday was 100 days since the first index case in February, and it has been an eventful period, saying that governments have had to learn on the run about the management of the pandemic in the country and the state, despite the increasing rate. Earlier in his remarks, the leader of the team, who is the marketing director of Xiaomi Nigeria, Mr. Habib Shomoye, said Ogun State is the first state to receive the company's support in the country, noting that fighting COVID-19 pandemic requires collective support, as government cannot fight the disease alone. While commending the state government's effort at flattening the curve of the pandemic in the state, the team leader also advised citizens of the state to adhere strictly to the rules, especially the wearing of nose masks and maintaining social distancing. The Ogun State government is set to begin distribution of uncooked food items to public school pupils in primary 1 to 3 to enable them have access to nutrient-rich foods despite disruption to the traditional channels of school feeding by COVID-19 pandemic. This was evident as Barrister Femi Ogumbanwo, the Commissioner for Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, handed the take-home rations packages to homegrown school feeding program aggregators in the state. Elizabeth Essom reports.
The National Homegrown School Feeding Program is a 17 naira per day school feeding aimed at improving the health and educational outcomes of public primary school pupils. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, which led to lockdown of schools in the country, the federal government gave the directive that states where the program is operational should continue by taking the food rations to the pupils' doorsteps. The take-home rations, valued at 4,200 naira, are made up of 5 kg of rice, 5 kg of beans, 500 ml vegetable oil, 750 ml palm oil, 500 milligram salt, 15 pieces of eggs, and 140 gram tomato paste, to benefiting states, of which Ogun State is one. Handing over the packages to aggregators in the state, Barrister Femi Ogumbanwo, Commissioner for Special Duties, says that the provision of the take-home rations will therefore be carried out based on data provided and structures put in place by the feeding program over the years.
For the school feeding palliatives, the distribution of the homegrown school feeding palliatives for the family 1 to 3 pupils.
Speaking on behalf of the aggregators, Mr. Abiodun Odukoya, President, Ogun State Meat Aggregators, commends the initiative and promises proper monitoring of the distribution of the packages.
Well, people are saying it's not true, but we can all see now that it is obvious, it is true. And in very few days, what we have in the holiday will be given out to various pupils at their various homes.
Resources were also deployed to provide oversight for the processes to ensure equity and accountability, as field personnel and monitoring teams were set up to help in the monitoring.
They've done well. It is not possible for you to have 100% perfection, but I would also say that Ogun State has done very, very well, at least based on my observations so far.
Each household will receive uncooked food items that have been assessed and approved by nutrition experts. Elizabeth Esson, Ogtv News.
The easing of lockdown means life is gradually returning back to normal, but the level of compliance to the guidelines for the prevention of the spread of the virus remains an issue. In the special report, Matthew Shomi carries out a review of the level of compliance in some of the major areas in Abeokuta, the state capital. His reports.
Through the easing of lockdown across Ogun State, life is gradually returning to normal, but not without some guidelines put in place to battle COVID-19 and prevent the spread of the pandemic. As the curve of the virus continues on the upward bend, the people must now be more committed in ensuring that the virus is completely defeated by following all the necessary guidelines. A visit to some markets in the capital city of Abeokuta, however, reveals otherwise, as most of the traders are going about their commercial activities with little or no regard for social distancing, wearing of face masks, and other guidelines. The market leaders promise that efforts are being intensified to ensure compliance to the guidelines and measures put in place to curtail the spread of the virus.
We, the yellowjackets, we have tried as much as possible to try and tell them that they should take precaution by using their nose mask, social distance. You know our people, some people will err, some people will disagree. Unlike some markets now, if you don't put on your face mask, you cannot enter the market. Like Obalipede market.
It is the same story at motor parks, as only few of the motorists are complying with the order of the government on the number of passengers they are permitted to convey at a time. While few of the commercial motorcyclists are seen with face masks, others wear it on their chin. Banks are also part of the places where the guidelines are not being strictly followed. Matthew Shoumi, Ogtv News.
The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 says the rise of coronavirus cases recorded in the country of recent is not unusual. The Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Dr. Chikwe Ihikwazu, stated this during the PTF briefing in Abuja on Thursday. He attributed the increase in the number of infections reported in the last few weeks to the eased lockdown. President Muhammadu Buhari has charged the ECOWAS Commission to come up with an economic recovery plan to help member states to recover from the economic devastation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking on Thursday at a virtual meeting with the President of the Commission, President Buhari, in his capacity as the ECOWAS COVID-19 champion, agreed to provide logistics support to enable the sub-region receive and distribute procured and donated medical equipment, using Abuja as the hub for the distribution. The Nigerian leader lamented that the pandemic is yet to reach its peak in the sub-region and warned against laxity in the fight against it. He called on member states to continually sensitize their citizens on preventive measures. The President expressed appreciation on behalf of ECOWAS member states for the swift interventions made to the West African Health Organization and the African Center for Disease Control by the Jackma Foundation, while also commending the support so far received from development partners such as the European Union, African Development Bank, France, and Germany for their financial contributions in the procurement of medical supplies. He urged member states to work closely in order to overcome the pandemic in the sub-region. In his report to President Buhari, the President of the ECOWAS Commission advocated additional strategies to assist the sub-region in fighting the health and economic impact of COVID-19. And still to come, Nigeria Governors Forum declares state of emergency on rape and violence against women. More news and stories after this break. Welcome back. It's still Ogtv News. The Nigeria Governors Forum has agreed to declare a state of emergency on sexual and gender-based violence against women and children. They also renewed commitment to ensuring that offenders face the full weight of the law. This was contained in a communique signed by the chairman of the NGF, Dr. Kaudi Fayemi, after the forum's 10th COVID-19 teleconference meeting in Abuja. The communique was issued in Abuja on Thursday. The forum called on state governors that have not already domesticated relevant gender-based protection laws to domesticate the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, the Child Rights Act, and the updated Penal Code to increase protection for women and children and ensure speedy investigation and prosecution of perpetrators, in addition to creating a sex offenders register in each state to name and shame. Ogun State Government has inaugurated a 7-man committee comprising of permanent secretaries and directors on sexual harassment as advocated by the Development Agenda for Western Nigeria Commission, DON, and DFID PO in line with the promotion of decent work environment in the southwestern states of Nigeria. The head of service, Town Planner Amope Choko, during the inauguration held in her office, stated that Ogun State, which is the first to take this step among the southwest states, will make it imperative to have a policy in place to address the issue of sexual harassment in the workplace, as this will in no way be condoned in Ogun State civil service.
committee to look into the issue of sexual harassment in workplace. So I welcome you to this meeting. What we do here is that KP Fadini is the CS Bureau Service Matter. We're going to serve as chairman today of the committee. I have also been Dr. Mrs. Mati Olabende, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Welfare. She's going to be a member. I have with me Mrs. Gail Fajimbo, Permanent Secretary, Bureau of Establishment and Training. Also have with me your first man, Mr. A. Road, Permanent Secretary, the Public Service Transformation Office.
Yes, ma'am.
Also have here Mrs. Adeolu.
In his remarks, the Permanent Secretary, Bureau of Service Matters, Mr. Kolawole Fagbon, who is to serve as the chairman of the committee, appreciated the head of service for the confidence vested in them as a committee and promised to give their best shot as plans will begin as soon as possible. The representative of the Don Commission, Mrs. Munachizum Odulano, in a goodwill message, said she was proud of Ogun State for setting the pace amongst other states in Southwest, while charging other states to emulate this. The Permanent Secretary, Public Service Transformation Office, Mr. Jola Oyeneye, while appreciating the head of service for her proactiveness in this direction, said the committee will be prompt and will be back soon with good reports. There is need for proper orientation and legislation to ensure total eradication of child labor in the society. This was the submission of a cross-section of Nigerians who spoke with Ogtv News on the effect of child labor on socio-economic growth. Yusuf Ganiu reports.
Child labor has become a global issue with both local and international concerns that accounted for 22% of workforce in Asia, 32% in Africa, 17% in Latin America and 1% in the United States, Canada and Europe amongst others. Child labor in Nigeria is the employment of children under the age of 18 in a manner that restricts or prevents them from basic education and development. Those who spoke with Ogtv News identify poverty as a major factor that drives child labor in Nigeria.
The parents will tell you that the reason why they are sending their kids out there into those hazards is because they needed to make additional living for themselves. At times, some of these kids even offer to do it themselves, to be able to send themselves to school, to be able to finance some of their things that their parents cannot provide for them. But the reality is that if there is proper orientation, people will probably not get into it. So I want to see it as more of a failure of the society.
We have some parents that are totally ignorant of anything about a proper development of a child. But the underlying factor across the whole world is poverty.
Child workers include street vendors, shoe shiners, apprentice mechanics, carpenters, tailors, and domestic servants who are sometimes being exposed to dangerous and unhealthy environments.
Those children you are seeing hawking out there, actually their rights are being violated because with their present age, at the age of 9, 10, they are not expected to be seen hawking, especially during school hours. But some parents will tell you that that's their business and their means of livelihood, that they only allow the child to stay with them at the shop during after school hour. But you and I know that during school hour, 10, 11, 1 o'clock, some children are being found on the streets selling one thing or the other.
They stress the need for government to look into the social menace to ensure every children have the right to social values.
In a situation whereby they are supposed to add to the capital, the human capital of the nation, and we are losing them to child labor. We are losing them to all this child abuse. How do we get them to add to that human capital for the future?
I want to advise the parents that they should double their aggression as far as working to make sure that children become great in life.
Child labor can be mentally, physically, socially, and morally harmful to children's development. Yusuf Ganiyu, Ogtv News.
Workers in Ogun State have been charged to continue to be good ambassadors of the state by maintaining good character and integrity, as people still believe that they stand out among their peers in the country. the head of service, town planner Amokwe Chako, who stated this at the retirement ceremony in honor of the permanent secretary, Bureau of Protocol and Ceremonials, Mr. Dolapo Odulano, encouraged the workforce to remain focused at all times and support Governor Dakwa Abiodun's drive to take the state to the promised land. Speaking earlier, the chairman, Body of Permanent Secretaries and Permanent Secretary, Bureau of Service Matters, Mr. Kolawole Fagbon, appreciated God in the life of the celebrant, saying that there was never a dull moment with Mr. Odulano. He charged civil servants to emulate him as a dedicated officer.
When you see good virtue in people and you appreciate them, you want to look at your life, see how you have also fared and how you are faring, so that down the line, when you also will have to bow out of office, what will people say about you? So I want to say that whatever good thing you have identified that some of you have spoken of, you should also invite them. If they are good, it means that you can also emulate them, and then ensure that as you relate with one another, as we work with various agencies where we have come from.
In a goodwill message, the Director of Finance and Accounts, Bureau of Protocol, Mrs. Kemi Fabaju, described Mr. Odulano as God-fearing, hardworking, humble, and full of integrity, saying that the staff will continue to see him as an achiever and good mentor. In his short exhortation from Psalm 114, 1-7, Reverend Olupebi said the Bible passage will work for every child of God that believes, noting that no attack of the enemy will prevail because God's shield was made round his people. The highlight of the event was a presentation of gift by the Body of Permanent Secretaries led by its chairman, Mr. Kolawole Fagbon. Justice Monica Dongwem Mensem has been confirmed as the President of the Court of Appeal. President Muhammadu Buhari had in a letter urged the Senate to approve the nomination of Justice Dongwem Mensem as the President Court of Appeal. She was confirmed after a report of the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters by Senator Okpayemi Bamidele said no petition was received against her nomination. The nominee is a fit and proper person for appointment as the President of the Court of Appeal. The committee recommends that the Senate confirms the nomination of Honorable Justice Dongwem Mensem as Honorable President of the Court of Appeal. Senator Ike Ekweremadu congratulated the nominee, saying women are making progress in the scheme of things. He said this is because Justice Mensem is succeeding a woman who served and retired in the same capacity. Ekweremadu urged the new President of the Court of Appeal to join forces with others to carry out reforms in the justice system, especially in election matters. The Federal High Court in Abuja has affirmed the deregistration of 32 political parties. In a judgment, Justice Anwule Chukere dismissed the suit filed by the parties against the powers of the Independent National Electoral Commission to deregister them. The judge held that the commission rightly deregistered the parties in line with the provision of Section 225A of the Nigerian Constitution. The political parties were among the 74 that were deregistered by the INEC on February 6, 2020, on the grounds of poor performance at the 2019 general elections. The judge had earlier on February 17 this year issued an order restraining INEC from acting on the notice deregistering the 32 political parties pending the determination of the suit. The Thursday's judgment by the court discharged the restraining order as it validated the Commission's action. The Senate on Thursday confirmed the appointment of 42 ambassadors designate. This was just as the upper chamber confirmed the nomination of James Gia Jean Kolo as Commissioner of the Federal Character Commission. The confirmation of the nominees was sequel to the consideration of the reports of the Senate Committees on Foreign Affairs and Federal Character and Intergovernmental Affairs. President Muhammadu Buhari, in a letter dated May 6, 2020, said the appointment of the nominees was in accordance to Section 171, subsection 12C and subsection 4 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. Meanwhile, the Senate on Thursday adjourned plenary till Tuesday, June 23, 2020. The announcement was made by the Senate President, Ahmed Lawan, after the adoption of the votes and proceedings for Thursday, June 11, 2020. President Muhammadu Buhari has described as shocking the killings recorded in Gubio village, Borno State. The state government had confirmed that 81 people were killed in the attack that was carried out on the village on Tuesday afternoon. 7 persons, including a village head, were also said to have been abducted by the insurgents. A statement by the President's Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, described the killings to have been carried out by Boko Haram Islam in West African province as one of the most brutal terrorist attacks on innocent people in the northeast. Shehu said the president, who was expecting a detailed briefing by the state governor, Professor Babangana Zulum, on the outcome of his visit to the affected community, said the primordial nature of the killings is particularly shocking because it happened not long after the Ramadan and Eid, and the country is preparing to celebrate Democracy Day. In condemning the incident, Buhari charged the armed forces to sustain their recent string of successes against the terrorists, to extract a heavy price from the attackers and bring back all those they kidnapped, as well as a large number of cattle rustled. He also expressed condolences to the government and people of Nigeria, to the bereaved families, communities, and the government and people of the state. The Senate has asked the federal government to urgently deploy more military personnel and operatives of other security agencies to flush out Boko Haram insurgents from Lake Chad region. This request followed point of order raised by Senator Abubakar Kyari during plenary on Thursday in the Senate Chamber of the National Assembly in Abuja. Senator Kyari, who represents Borno North Senatorial District, drew the attention of his colleagues to fresh Boko Haram attacks that have led to the death of scores of people in his state. In his resolution, the Senate urged the federal government to direct the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and Northeast Development Commission to immediately send relief materials to the victims of the attacks. The lawmakers also resolved to observe a minute of silence in honor of those who lost their lives, adding that the Senate President and Speaker of the House of Representatives should meet with President Muhammadu Buhari to work out new strategies to confront Boko Haram in the northeast. The House of Representatives has decried the continued killing of people by insurgents in the northeast and bandits in the northwest, calling for decisive action against insecurity. The Chairman, Committee on Defense, Mr. Babajimi Benson, in a statement issued on Thursday, commiserated with the people of Udima Kolomaya community in Gubio local government area of Borno State and residents of Askari local government of Katsina State over the death of 121 persons by Boko Haram and bandits. Benson, who extended his sympathy to the governments and the entire people of the two states, said the death of any individual in Nigeria, especially from insecurity, should be a source of concern to all. The lawmaker, who represents Ikorodu Federal Constituency of Lagos State, said it is disheartening that at the time the military was making gains in the fight against insurgents and bandits, the criminals could strike in these communities and kill that large number of people. He bemoaned the situation, which he described as very sad, saying more military action is needed in the affected states for the insurgents and bandits to be dealt with decisively. According to him, the death toll in both Borno and Katsina states in just one day was almost 1/3 of the total death recorded from COVID-19 pandemic so far. While commending officers and men who, through their sacrifice and bravery, are working to reduce the level of insecurity in the affected states, he also encouraged them to put up their game at this time. The Nigerian military has sustained its onslaughts on any form of criminality in the northeast and north-central zones of the country in a move aimed to eliminate banditry, terrorism, among others. To this end, the Air Task Force of Operation Lafayette has destroyed a Boko Haram terrorist hideout and neutralized some of the fighters in Sambisa Forest, Borno State. In a statement, the coordinator, Defense Media Operations, Defense Headquarters, Major General John Eneche, has it that, upon intelligence reports, Air Task Force dispatched ISR aircraft and fighter jets to attack the hideout. With overhead target area, many Boko Haram terrorist fighters were engaged in successive passes by the attack aircraft, which led to destruction of some of the structures, as well as neutralized several terrorists. The Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, has therefore commended the Air Task Force of the operations and urged them to intensify the air offense against terrorists. The Defense Headquarters equally saluted the courage and dedication of the Air Task Force, working in concert with other security agencies and stakeholders towards the defeat of the criminals in the Northeast. There was a fracas on the Kaduna State House of Assembly as members exchanged blows over the impeachment of the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Mukhtar Azo. Following Azo's impeachment during plenary, the lawmakers elected the member representing Karu constituency, Mr. Isaac Auta, as the new Deputy Speaker. His impeachment notice was signed by 24 members of the Assembly. Before he was removed from office, there were speculations of an alleged plot by 7 members of the House, led by the former Deputy Speaker, to impeach the Speaker, Yusuf Zailani. However, lawmakers in support of the former Deputy Speaker exchanged blows with other members in the process of trying to remove the mace of House after the impeachment. In his reaction, the Speaker told newsmen that the impeached deputy was the architect of his own misfortune. Zailani accused Azo of conniving with other lawmakers to remove him as the Speaker, claiming that the former Deputy Speaker also committed other infractions that were against the rule of the House. Earlier, some policemen and other security operatives stormed the Assembly complex over the plot to impeach the Speaker, who was elected into office on February 25. Senate passes 10.8 trillion naira revised 2020 budget. Next is business news.
The board, management and staff of Gateway Mortgage Bank felicitate with Right Honorable Olakunle Taiwo Oluomo, the Honorable Speaker of the 9th Ogun State House of Assembly, and the entire members of the 9th Ogun State House of Assembly on the 1-year anniversary in the Alo Chamber. By extension, we heartily congratulate the House for the successful passage of the foreclosure and mortgage bill in the state. This is indeed one of the landmark achievements of the House within these 365 days in office. We are proud to be associated with you. Long live Ogun State House of Assembly, long live Ogun State, long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Gateway Mortgage Bank, making your home ownership dream a real. Announcer, the board, management and staff of the Gateway Mortgage Bank. The Bible Society of Nigeria rejoiced with Right Honorable Taiwo Olakunle Oluomo, Honorable Speaker of the 9th Ogun State House of Assembly, and the entire members of the House on the 4th anniversary in the Alo Chamber. We pray that God Almighty will continue to guide and protect as you continue to serve the good people of Ogun State. We are proud to be associated with you. Long live Ogun State House of Assembly, long live Ogun State, long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Announcer, the Bible Society of Nigeria.
Welcome back. This is the business segment of the news. The Senate on Thursday passed the revised 2020 budget of 10.8 trillion naira, the exact amount approved by the House of Representatives on Wednesday. The budget was passed at both the Senate plenary and at the Committee of Supplies, following the consideration of the report of the Senator Barau Jibril-led Committee on Appropriation. The Senate increased the budget size of 10.5 trillion naira presented to it by the executive by about 300 billion naira. The sum of 500 billion naira was passed in the budget as an intervention fund for COVID-19, while 186 billion naira was earmarked for the health sector. The sum of 422 billion naira was for statutory transfers and 4.9 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure. The Economic Sustainability Committee, chaired by Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, on Thursday submitted its report to the President, Muhammadu Buhari, recommending that the government embarks on mass job creation to cushion the effect of COVID-19 pandemic. President Buhari set up the committee on March 30, 2020, in response to what was then becoming a threat of the most severe economic downturn in the country's history, largely caused by the pandemic. Its terms of reference include to develop a clear economic sustainability plan in response to challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, to propose monetary policy measures in support of the plan, and to provide a fiscal monetary stimulus package, including support to private businesses and vulnerable segments of the population, among others. Presenting the report to President Buhari at the Presidential Villa, Abuja, Osinbajo said the committee recommended that the government put in place mass programs that can create jobs and utilize local materials. Buhari, shortly after receiving the report, praised Nigerians for their resilience and adaptation to the realities of COVID-19. Pension funds administrators have invested 54.35 billion naira of the total assets under the contributory pension scheme in infrastructure as of the end of April. Figures obtained from the National Pension Commission revealed that the total assets under the scheme stood at 10.57 trillion naira. Some of the funds were invested in agency bonds, supranational bonds, commercial papers, foreign money market securities, and open closed-end funds. Other investment portfolios where the operators invested the funds are real estate investment trusts, private equity funds, cash, and other assets. The Acting Director General, PENCOM, Mrs. Aisha Dahir Umar, said the scheme had been experiencing growth since its inception. United States military apologizes for joining Trump walk. Details shortly. Welcome back. On the world today, President Donald Trump has authorized sanctions and additional visa restrictions against International Criminal Court personnel, the latest attempt by the administration to strong-arm the international body out of an investigation into potential war crimes by U.S. military and intelligence officials.